Going live. Testing, testing, testing. Why is my mic not reading on the peak meter? Properties. Comms, check. Is it just a weird, like my Mac is not having it today? Okay, the peak meter now appears to be peak metering, but in super slow motion and or like animation fail. It's Wednesday, January 15th, 3:27 p.m. Connecting to Twitch TV using Streamlabs desktop version 1.17.2. Did we get a weird update? Or am I lacking an update? Or is presumably everything's working. I'm going to do a comms check on my headset, because I did just change that. Comms check. Sounds good here. Oh, God, that chair sounds horrible when it happens. And I bet it absolutely sounds like, to some people, like flatulence. Ugh. Anyways, it's too early in the stream to try to be funny. Hello and welcome, friends. Greetings. It is Wednesday, January 15th, 3:28 p.m. And I am once more back again, live on stream after a hot minute of not being around. DJ Zed, pick up some music, and let's have a little bit of a starting moment video preload audio session. Greetings and salutations, friends. Hello, hello, hello. Ah, there we go. Our peak meter seems to be working. It's been a hot second. I have been away from... Where are all my buttons? Everything feels weird and different and out of order. Welcome, friends. Oh, look, my camera's all wonky. Pardon me for one technical moment as I fix the camera. This is the Almost Daily Variety Gaming live stream show and content creation live stream show extravaganza. And I am your humble if slightly sometimes not so eloquent host. And this is the pregame chat lounge session. There's usually lots of disclaimers. I've been doing this gimmick with the robot voice reader, etc. If any of you have not seen my most recent videos that are still on the video on demand shelf, please do before they disappear, especially any highlighted ones. This one's a little wonky different. It's my first one back after not being able to stream or make any content whatsoever since the new year for all kinds of different reasons. And I don't want to make this a pity party about myself. But this is a real, raw, radically unscripted, sometimes, memoir-ish journey of personal self-expression in which I do sometimes go on tangents and just talk about what's going on with me. Hopefully not in what sounds like self-centered or narcissistic orientation. I am very deeply concerned and paranoid about all the different ways something can go wrong and or be interpreted incorrectly because I'm an overthinker. And as any Zen Buddhist critic of the human species would tell you, because we all are a little bit guilty of all the things. A little bit, in tiny doses. But I digress. Hello and welcome and thank you for tuning in to anybody watching, especially if you're on TikTok, which I have not been live streaming to in a really long time. So it's one of my first moments back. It's really weird to be back. It's been a tough start to the year. I don't need these headsets on. I did the comms check. Please know. Hold on. Let me turn off these chat bots. Please know, dear viewers, that I'm not trying. There we go. Hello, TikTok. So, dear TikTok viewers, please know that I'm on an iMac, and I'm using I'm live streaming to TikTok using Streamlabs desktop because they have some kind of special deal and it works wonky, and I do not get TikTok chat integrated into the Streamlabs chat panel. In fact, they did something where like their chat integration for multi-streaming, both on the free mode and on the pro pay mode over the last 2 years, say, or year and a half about a time. Or if we just went from 1 year backwards from today, actually, we can encapsulate all of this, I think, has just gone from, it used to be way better, and now it just doesn't work really. It just shows you Twitch. Or it just shows you whatever your primary platform is, and then the rest are supposed to show up on the multi-stream tab, but they often don't. And if they do, they show up really, really late and really, really laggy. So I apologize to all of you if I don't see any hellos, or if I don't shout out people's names. Like I see MC Tomahawk just joined recently. Instead of getting all of that integrated into Streamlabs, I get a generated TikTok Live monitoring tab in my web browser, which is otherwise inaccessible. And I'm not criticizing, I'm just stating the facts, friends. And by way of excusing myself if I'm not as like instantly, hello, BM user 1124. That sounds like a bot. If you're not a bot, I apologize. I never set out to call people bots on purpose, unless they are actually bots. But in my universe, bots aren't necessarily all that bad, except when they are. Okay, so what the F is this show about? It's about too many things at once. And I'm going to move back. So TikTok, I have to, for functional reasons, move back to my Streamlabs desktop. I'm going to check the multi-stream tab and see if we get anything. TikTok chat is not integrated in here. And of course, as we know, we're just days away from arguably things changing dramatically. So any of my TikTok followers out there, please know that I am Mr. Zeppo on all legitimate platforms that I legitimately have a profile on. And if you're interested in following me for live stream purposes, go directly to Twitch because that's where I will continue to be live streaming. So this is in part 1. Oh, my laser beams aren't on. For the TikTok audience, you guys can't. Twitch already can see that, but TikTok, you got a weird. I should adjust the TikTok camera. Come here, TikTok camera. So I got all kinds of opinions, as you all can imagine, about what may or may not go down with TikTok in the coming hours, days, and or weeks, and or months, and or this new year. But that's not even what this episode's about. I just wanted to like ground and reconnect and talking in live stream mode and trying to reboot my entire presence, my brand, my channel, and the content creation project of many projects that I'm trying to juggle and weave together into one cohesive smorgasbord of too many things that are all kind of the same thing, but sometimes there are really, 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 really dramatically different things. Such as my podcast is really different from my book series, but it's really different, which is really different from my day-to-day Facebook presence, but they're all like deeply interconnected. So to everyone on every platform, insert the names of all the platforms here. I apologize, especially to the ones that I have fallen off of. And this kind of go 360 degrees back on myself. Primarily Twitch/TikTok if I'd been, active as I intended to. I've just been kind of offline for almost a fortnight. Not the video game, but the actual Elizabethan measurement in calendaric terms. And that has a lot to do with the fact that I'm just, a human being that was already operating on like thin ice, as it were, when it came to just like my capacity to process the realities of our world as it appears to be unraveling around us, and my emotional fortitude and ability to present content that comments on that, as well as content that doesn't, and maintaining a professional, entertaining, engaging online performance artist presence. I couldn't do it. Couldn't be bothered. Couldn't be asked. Couldn't be forced. Couldn't be paid enough money. Although I guess if I was doing it for reals professionally and there was a lot of money on the line, like a career, which I do not have, like in the standard sense, like if I was a real disc jockey on a major radio station, I don't know what I would have done. But I know what I did do, which was take time for myself to process and pay attention as much as possible, and to express support directly to those I know that are being directly impacted. I just did a big podcast episode over on Sprecher.com. That was my first attempt to get back into the workflow of whatever this nonsense is supposed to be or might evolve into being, and send out a real, sincere, honest message about just, where I've been at and why I have not been able to, as originally planned and to some degree or another taunted, teased, promoted, stated publicly on this, on this live stream and on other platforms, to try to dive into presenting and living up to the title of Almost Daily in a strong fashion, focused on specifically bringing to the mix and to the forefront the thing that's always been supposed to be at the center, which is writing a book series, which has trying to do all that, dear friends. And I need to apologize to anybody who's like, what the fuck? An audience member who may or may not be aware of the the course of events that are in reality quite close enough to me that, like, but for the fact that I'm several hundred miles away or whatever it is, several dozen miles away, just far enough away here topographically and geographically that I'm not directly being impacted and or threatened by those course of events. But LA's a strong place, and of course, so is everywhere else, right? I'm not trying to minimize by speaking on and talking about what's happened here in the course of the year. It mostly through the framework of my direct or indirect, let's say, connection to it, and it having sort of the most negative impact on my well-being and my mental health and my ability and willingness to continue, to work on any of my pet projects here. It's been a rough couple days, obviously not as rough as those of my friends and acquaintances and all the rest of the perfect strangers that have been living through it directly. But I've lived here in the shadow of the city, this infamous city, and have worked and adventured and played and been a tourist on its streets, for the vast majority of my life here on this planet Earth, for better or worse, and for no reason other than that's what I was born into. I wasn't born here, I was born elsewhere, but I was born into a set of circumstances that led me to be here at a very young age. I very much do feel like a California native, despite not literally having been born in the state of California. But I've lived here for the vast entirety of my life. So I can't help but feel directly connected to it and the folks around it, and feel insulted for and on the behalf of when nonsense and malarkey distracts from the work that needs to be done, right? But that's what finally got me back to it. So if you are going to go and be bold and go check out my most recent episode on Sprecher.com, which you can find links to on my link collection page, solo.to/Mr. Zeppo. You may or may not agree with my positions there, but you will at least understand, where I'm at and what my thoughts are there. Not going to get spiraled into that. There's a lot going on in the gaming world. And what I want to talk about here is just sort of my journey. This experience that I want to talk about because it relates to the content slash the juxtaposition of the different seemingly unrelated focal points in my different content creation projects. For example, in my podcast, the vast majority of that, in terms of episodes already published in the past and episodes that theoretically might have been dropping during the course of the last several days and weeks as we got into and through the New Year's to where we are now, would have been political in nature. Which is why, for the first time in a hot minute, I've activated the political slash social issues or whatever the other. It's got several clause, comma slash addendum names in the tag marker bit. There's so much going on, and last year was brutal. And on occasion, especially when somewhere in the course of events, it's major news, major local news, major national news, major global news, that some people somewhere are going through deep tragedy or great powerful suffering, or horrific injustice, violation of their human rights, etc. it becomes really, 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 really difficult for me, despite my ability and my training and my intelligence and my passion for free speech and for everyone's artistic pursuits, etc., etc., etc. As a performance artist, I know that we must carry on despite the madness, or else we will suffer the silencing of our artistic voice, right? And that's what I've been struggling with, because no matter how you slice it, no matter which project of many projects, whether it's the gaming, live streaming, which has its purpose beyond just the surface, which is to live stream video game content and commentary and chat around it, but also all the other stuff, the book series, the podcast, which is more about social and political and current events discussion and commentary, and under the banner of global, international, local, national, public discourse for the purposes of contributing to the evolving human discussion about what's going on. It all just felt so... The overwhelming feeling at the start of this year that so many new horrible things were piled on top of the background of ongoing horrible things. And on the corkboard, I just want to acknowledge that I'm very much aware of the fact that today is at least a day where we can say and recognize one genuinely good thing, a new good turn of events, or hopefully at least the beginnings of the very first sort of foundations of what I hope personally will evolve to be a genuinely good new development in one of those ongoing, massively horrible, deeply tragic, and traumatic ongoing global events that I have only admittedly very removed, indirect connections to, but still a deep, sincere human set of emotional responses about, and intellectual questions, concerns, and critiques regarding, and a sense of trauma fatigue about. It's traumatic, even if I wanted to say nothing about it, even if I wanted to never think about it, even if I wanted to never engage in the public discourse around it. Just knowing and having to bear human, intellectual, cognizant witness to that, plus all the other ongoing, extended human tragedies around the world. It gets exhausting for anybody and everybody if they're truly witness to it to whatever degree, even if they are remote and far away from it. There are, of course, ways to completely barricade yourself, and I'm not someone who's been particularly doing that, and so it's been rough. And as I pointed out on my own social media, in a little bit more live in the moment, which was the threshold level where I felt somewhat capable of engaging a little bit during the course of that fortnight's worth of time. For any human who is, trying to do multiple things at once and pay attention and not be, cold-hearted and only calculating, this sort of thing gets under your skin and into your heart and into your mind and into your soul in a way that is painful and is obviously not to say that it's more important than in any way, shape, or form anybody else's suffering. All of it is collective trauma. The human species, I'm trying to build a framework to connect, not eclipse, any and all the incidents and any and all the individuals out there who are suffering, and acknowledge that all of that suffering is suffering that not only impacts those immediately there, it also to in a lesser degree and in a degree that's different and obviously a little more intangible, all those who witness it, whether they want to talk about it or acknowledge it or not. And dare I say it, maybe even, I think it's especially true that, and this has to be brought to the table, it impacts everyone. The trauma is species wide, especially I think at the threshold that we've been enduring it and that it seems to be escalating to. It all seems to be escalating exponentially in degrees that are just mind-boggling. And I know all of that was quite a mouthful, and I said it in the most, I guess you might say, anonymized terms, because I don't want to I don't want this first little blurb to be controversial or to be about being on one side or the other about any of it. I'm full of gratitude because pretty much since New Year's Eve, I've been waking up. I've been going to bed every night and waking up every day, dreading what the next thing is and where it may or may, where it may come from, and what, and dreading that the I did not pronounce that word at all. The cumulative impact. Sorry, that sounded really weird. That was just sort of like my mouth was not quite warmed up enough. And I went to say cumulative, and all I could pull off, because my tongue got a little tongue-tied, was my cumulative impact on me is obviously going to be different than the cumulative impact on anyone else, especially the closer they are. And the more in the thick of a particular real world horrible tragic event, of which there are many, and of which I'm sort of just collectively going, they all are horrifyingly causing great suffering in many directions and in great rippling waves that are sort of enveloping the whole planet. And none of it is about minimizing or over prioritizing one over the other, but rather acknowledging it and trying to work through it as, in my humble opinion, and I think I've said this before, pin on the corkboard. I'm fairly certain I've said this countless times, but it seems like those who want to pick arguments at me, because they're not really trying to have the arguments with me, they're just trying to blast through me with argumentation on various platforms of social media. Said it before and I'll have to say it again. Whatever the cumulative things may be, when we add them all up in total, I think the one thing we must all collectively come to terms with is that fundamentally, if we're going to, as a collective community of communities, a species of many different families of human beings, we're going to have to really focus on interpersonal, individual, and collective psychological, emotional, spiritual, transcendental, and I want to sprinkle in some extra words here for the purposes of trying to, point in certain directions, metacognitive, metaphysical, transformative healing. I could have used a bunch of other different words. There's a lot of noise going on in moments like this. Because, human beings are human beings, and the ego works the way the ego works. And one of those ego treadmills that are kind of satisfying to get stuck on, actually, because, I can't deny that I've found myself at times, especially when I was younger and enthusiastically unaware of my own naive flaws, or naively unaware of my own flaws and hypocrisies and whatnot, and we all have them, right? Fundamentally, that's the thing that drives me the most painfully, like a little cuckoo crazy. And I shouldn't say that. It drives me nuts, to borrow the punchline to a really dumb joke, a really dumb pirate joke, which I don't even want to. It really chaps my hide. It really gets under my skin. It really, to borrow lots of different to paraphrase probably badly, the various colloquialisms. It really rattles my something. Rattles my cage. It concerns me deeply and frustrates me to no end, right? That healing is the tool we can, could, should, would all be turning to. And I get why we aren't, collectively speaking, and at an individual level, right? Because reality works the way it is, and because the mind is caught up in what it's caught up in, and because the facts are what they are. Anybody could be like, well, why did you mope about and wallow in... So anybody could turn to me and be like, about what I just went through, right? But it was emotionally challenging, and my own mind was struggling against itself in that sort of imposter syndrome way of being just like feeling unworthy and unqualified and unworthy and unwelcome somehow, as I don't know by whom or by what measure, to be sharing my thoughts in any way, shape, or form, let alone in such a way that I am trying to pretend to, participate in this commodifying ourselves for each other's entertainment, online, social media, hustles of different kinds of hustling. I coulda, shoulda, woulda, might have just been bringing more of, what I'm talking about now to it to try to work through it. And in hindsight, that might have helped. That might have also just been a mess, because I feel like I'm already off the rails and have lost all thread of what I was trying to say. But let's get a little political. I did tag this thing political. Where are we? Let's actually update the... Hello, Nape4867. I wish that little list sidebar, random thing, just for the TikTok audience. I really do wish that this pop-up monitor live TikTok tab that Streamlabs generates for me would have a full-length list of everyone that's dropped by, so that at any time when I do pop over to it, it's really limited to one. If someone else were to join right now, the name that's currently displayed would disappear. So when I do pop over to it, I have one number that could be total viewers right now, or just collectively and not actually active. But apparently there's 23 viewers. It doesn't tell me if those are 23 concurrent active viewers or not. So I apologize. Anyways, what was I looking for? So a lot's been going on. The world's been a mess. The world's been on fire, both figuratively and literally. And I don't... That's a painful thing to have to say out loud, given that I'm quite literally um, a brutal 3 hour away commute from the heart of the devastation uh, of what just happened in Los Angeles, and that I know dozens of people up there. To them, I wish I could directly send not just emotional, psychological, spiritual, vibrational support, which I do, and that's what I've been focusing on because I, quote, believe in that. But I also, as the critical thinker that I am, also believe in that thoughts and prayers without action is meaningless. And given my tumultuously nothing to brag about financial situation, the most immediate thing that I feel that I can do is speak out against the malarkey, to bring back full circle, and as to why this live stream is labeled political. I've already done a podcast episode of it on my podcast, and this is me sort of reflecting that here from a slightly different perspective on my live stream. I know that the gaming community may or may not have a lot of crossover. Like, I do not know how much crossover the gaming community, especially the live stream enthusiasts portions or sub segments of it have with like world events and conspiracy theory discussion folks, and I worry that there probably isn't. But I've just been deeply troubled by how quick and how easy, and not just for this event, but every other event similar to it. And mind you, I'm not the kind of person that blindly, knee-jerk, automatically dismisses all theories. And here's the contextual thing that makes me, I think, actually radically different in regards to where I'm coming from and what my perspective is and what point of view I'm trying to communicate than most people involved in this discussion on either side of the obvious tug of war divide. And that's that I don't deny that, people with power and capital conspire to do all kinds of crazy and horrible, malicious things. All kinds of people get exposed, caught, and held account to their machinations all the time. But as I'm constantly, this is a banner I've been waving for a really long time, and I'm just trying to, and I think I've also been sort of increasingly trying to wave it broader and bigger. Like, it's all interconnected, right? You can't stand and go, those outlets over there are never to be trusted because they're absolutely this or that, and then this one source is to be mindlessly, thoughtlessly, unquestioningly, I cannot pronounce that word apparently, trusted because they only, whatever it is, pure truth. Isn't that exactly what? And so the context I'm trying to bring to the meta discussion, which is hard to do because it's hard for me to do because knowing that people are suffering, and that if I were in those shoes, if I were in their shoes, anybody's shoes, people suffering here, people suffering around the world, in any of the 50, almost 60 other, conflicts and or horrible tragic events. I mean, if you include conflicts and non-military, there's hundreds of things going on around the world that are just like, there are people there suffering so much. And I'm a gratitude-oriented person, but there's a point where it feels almost horrible to feel that gratitude or to try to express that gratitude. But I digress. One of the things that I am a firm believer on is that we must unite in mind, body, spirit, intent, frequency, and action to effectuate, to implement, to manipulate healing-oriented or healing-focused solutions. And in that framework, if I may be so bold to talk about that, dear audiences on whatever platforms I'm currently broadcasting on, Twitch and TikTok, right? Sorry. If we root there or anchor ourselves in that, and this is why, as I pointed out in past things, this is why I'm often and very commonly and very quickly dismissed as a hippie, new age, wackadoodle, totally wrong, delusional, sheeple, conspiracy theorist, which sometimes I get called things that are almost blatantly contradiction in terms, because I'm blindly regurgitating someone else's programming, but I'm also some sort of crazy pseudoscientific, spiritual conspiracy theorist. But hey, whatever. But no one's been able to convince me, although I've been told that I'm wrong by a lot of people. No one's been able to convince me that at its core, my thesis is meaningless. And that's that if we don't heal ourselves, one another, each other, by some means that effectuates transformative, spiritual, mental, emotional, psychological, metaphysical healing, and I mean healing as real, but of a different nature than, when a doctor sets and helps facilitate the healing of a broken bone, just regarding the trauma that humanity as a species has gone through, endured, and sort of caused on itself. Once you look at everything collectively as, the actions of and the impact of those actions on the human species itself, right? Once you look at it from a species-wide perspective, we traumatize ourselves. We have been busy throughout all of known and probably therefore most of forgotten human history in self-traumatization. And if we want it to stop, if we want to put an end to the madness, we might want to heal the species vis-a-vis some system of healing, which we may or may not already have been shown or taught, or that may be a synthesis of all the known formats and modalities and practices and potential, undiscovered tools of healing that are not wackadoodle nut job, try and take advantage of others, junk cures, but real tangible things. Why? Because I've based all that on real phenomenological experiences of my own and of others whose accounts I've found to confirm my own and synergize with my own or make sense vis-a-vis my own lived experience. Utilizing a sincere, earnest, question everything, but also, question myself and my own biases and my own internal assumptions as thoroughly as possible, and as often as possible. So it's mind-boggling what we as a species have endured, and how much of it is stuff we did to ourselves, and how much of it might very well be adequately addressed, mitigated, and functionally, effectively solved. Or, sorry, I don't know why I started to sound a little bit like I was going to try and do a, what's his name impression, which I wasn't. There's a lot of, whenever I do catch my breath and reset myself after feeling way too overwhelmed to speak up, and I speak up again, I try to remind myself and those willing to hear me out, and that's all I can ask, right, is that people hear me out, is that we can argue and debate, point fingers, and propose solutions that may or may not be effective and or accurate and or realistic and or rooted in reality. Or we can stop and acknowledge that if we really, really take a good hard look, it becomes undeniable that if we do not, the following concern, the following statement, if we do not attempt some form of healing and arguably achieve it, we are doomed to continue to be stuck and perpetuate all the same problematic red flag, corrosive, toxic, self-traumatizing behaviors as a species, independent of what any individual may or may not be doing, or may not be engaging in, or may not be a part of. Once you start discussing it at a species-wide level, there's certain things that, without getting absolutist, pin on the corkboard, see all my previous references to my concerns about people who do indeed argue from an absolutist standpoint when we live in a relativistic universe, and we are, by nature, form, and function, relativistic creatures who think and perceive in relativistic ways. Those are all really big, giant, weird, and seemingly irrelevant terminologies that are, I think, fundamental to our lived experience and the phenomena involved, the often neglected and understood, or understood and only. There's so much that needs to get discussed, and to borrow the format of that meme, and to rephrase the argument or the question of the discussion I'm trying to have on this episode of the pregame chat lounge session, is that it's hard to get anything done. It's hard to get any work done, regardless of whether it's got to do with your own personal ambitions or with the ambitions of trying to solve the world's problems. If we are not free from the draining and exhausting and what's the sentence I'm trying to craft? The obstacles that get placed in our own way because we are exhausted and drained and impacted by individual and generationally inherited emotional, psychological, spiritual, biological, biomechanical, spiritual, psychological. If you can just put that into one big amalgam of a word, trauma, right? That is not obvious. It's not on the surface. It's not like as if we were walking around with a missing, mysteriously removed appendage. And that example comes from a movie I thought I had seen that I don't think I'd actually seen, although maybe I saw it and just fell asleep in the beginning of it. So I didn't really see it and couldn't remember any of its things. The Cloverfield Paradox, which is a delightful movie, which I really should do a full multi-part, totally irrelevant media review episode over on my podcast someday about. I hope that all made sense. I digress. Thank you for being here and tuning in and hearing me out. I have had so much that I wanted to do that I haven't done since the New Year's. So much, on so many levels, on so many projects. Because this is supposed to be a variety, chaotic, multi-platform live stream thing. That I just haven't been able to bring myself to do. I haven't been able to bring myself to 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 shift gears from whatever you would describe what I was feeling and limited by, and or whatever was causing my writer's block, for lack of a better label, my content creator's version of writer's block, which is rooted in and has a lot to do with my just feeling overwhelmed by that was just like one thing too many, especially because like I know people who live out there, and I'm by a tiny little bit of chaos theory's worth of butterfly effect, I don't, and I live just far enough away that it's like I might as well be in another state. And I feel that removed from it, but that immediately like right in the shadow of it, and that impotent, because I'm not a multimillionaire that I can be like, yo, but I have such ideas that from the perspective like if I were, and never mind if I was a billionaire, the things I'd be doing right now, not just for the people I know and that and sort of know. And have crossed paths with and have direct connections and or 2 degrees of connections and or 3 degrees of separation connection and or everyone in my 6-degree field of connection, the vast majority of them are folks I connected through because of time spent in and around that city, as opposed to anywhere else. So it hits different. Not better, not more importantly, not with a higher urgency, not with some priority, just different. And that pushed me over my threshold where I was just like, I can't function. I can't deal with the world the way it is. Because all of it didn't have to be that way if we just made different choices as a species. Because I am someone who sort of one of my siblings not too long ago told me, you kind of seem to try to exist in a, what is it? It's a term from physics. That has to do with the Schrodinger's cat. 2 impossibly overlapping positions. You can't, and he's like, you can't do that, bro. Insert the term here. Man, I wish he was here to like laugh in my face for not remembering and then say the sentence again. Superpositions, right? Like, what is the Schrodinger's cat's superposition? That it is both alive and or unalive in Schrodinger's box. To reference the theoretical, what kind of, I forget what department of physics he belongs in, but to reference his theoretical model and thought exercise. So my sibling says, like, we were having a very much a discussion about this because it was an issue all of last year too. Any sort of like any sort of like realistic reason for why I haven't produced or finished or done more of the envisioned and proposed content creation that is this project of many projects, is because there are days where I look at it and go like, who the F am I to even try, to even bother to put my thoughts and my questions and my content out there for others to consume in the face of so many different unjust, inhumane, horrifying, horrific things going on in the world. When I could be doing something, I guess, theoretically, but how many of us are guilty of that, right? Like, unless you, like, that's why we have heroes. That's why we call firefighters heroes, and why when they do good things instead of bad things, why we call anybody in any uniform, in any capacity of like infrastructure work, heroes instead of like not, because they've stepped up and above and beyond to do something mighty and powerful and meaningful that deeply impacts other people's lives. But we can, and that's why we have the culture of not all heroes wear capes, because we recognize and acknowledge, collectively speaking, that there are so many other forms of work that can get done. And I'm not trying to nominate myself or anything, but I do think there's a responsibility given the fact that we live in a world where there is this new media, this social media, and this cacophony of voices making statements and claims. And for better or worse, this is one of the places where I do feel I have something to contribute that might be of meaningful value. And I have been unable to, right? So this is me trying to work past that and get to a place where I can coherently return to it, despite the fact that some of it, because my content creation project of many projects is constituted of many different things, only some of which are inherently about making socio-political, satirical commentary about current events and the world we live in, as complicated as it is, and as limited as my ability to observe it all must be, right? Because I'm just one person stuck living my one life. And yeah, anyways, good grief. I want to thank everyone who's been out there and been, doing the really, really hard work, because there are heroes, right? There are organizations and individuals and communities of individuals doing amazing things around the world. And if there's anything I want to bring to the public discourse discussion of it is, hey, my problem, what gets to me is that from some of the politicians in our world to the collective viral throng of all of us, there's a bunch of folks choosing to focus almost entirely on spewing completely meaningless content that seems to be rooted in a sort of absence of empathy and sympathy that results in distraction, argumentation, and a rejection of, or a missing out of the opportunity for those who are caught up in it to realize that there's plenty of other stuff they could be focusing on that might be a little bit more helpful. At large, especially since whatever the causes may or may not be, it certainly feels as though these kinds of things, these horrific events, these tragedies, these seemingly unpredictable and unstoppable tragedies related to extreme climate and extreme political views. They're different categories, right? I'm not trying to connect them necessarily, but from wars to hurricanes and firestorms, and back to the distractionary and hurtful political ideologues spending more time using unavoidable tragedies of all types and kinds and caused by all kinds of things to contribute only negativity to the world. The whole thing is so taxing on the human spirit that no wonder that it seems like nothing can ever be done to achieve change. But I think that the silver lining, if we can achieve to orient around it and orient our thoughts, our work, our internal compass, is that like if we can engage in healing, if we can refocus our efforts collectively so that it's all being done through a framework and a lens and a recognition of that obviously unhealed people will not do, will unhealed people engage in unhealthy things and behavior and make unhealthy choices, right? And that if we're ever going to build healthy systems that are no longer fraught with unhealthy impacts and unhealthy implications, and if we're ever going to build systems that are resilient and healthy enough to not become corrupt and not lead to the kinds of outcomes that we wish we weren't enduring constantly over and over and over again, of all, the full spectrum of the things going on in the world. Like health, healing, it's like central to it. And so like probably instrumental towards the incremental creation of, it's got to be rooted in that. It's got to start with healing, not everything else we could argue about first, right? If we want to neutralize the madness, bring about real tangible solutions that are better solutions than the ones we've been trying before, that actually meaningfully create change for the greater good, and not in spite of the greater good or in false name of the greater good, right? Then it actually makes sense to acknowledge that we won't be able to do that if we're only making things worse and neglecting that reality, that healing is necessary for that to be possible, right? That the species-wide healing is at the core of it all. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm crazy. I've certainly been called crazy before by dozens and dozens and dozens of people. But this is what my honest critical thinking and questioning and consideration of everything, right? Everything that could be called the global evidence and facts on the ground. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But I feel called to stand up in defense of the innocents who are suffering unnecessarily at the hands of all the causes that cause suffering, and go, hey, whoa. Anybody willing to hear me out as to how we could stop treading water collectively? As how we could stop treading on these engineered treadmill wedge issues of argumentation and distraction, and step off them so that we can then collaborate on effective, practical, real world solutions, right? Because problems have solutions, folks. But some of the things that we get caught up in doing got nothing to do with solving problems. Yeah, that's what I gotta say about that. Okay, so that was weird, and that was an hour's worth of madness, and it didn't go the way I sort of originally thought it might go. And it did sort of turn into a podcast instead of a just chatting. And I'm not getting any chat. Hello, Ashley. Hello, the bird. Hello, one henchman. Hello, Humax. Oh, there's suddenly an onslaught of people joining on TikTok. Hello, everybody on TikTok. And welcome. And thank you for tuning in. I'm just a wild, wacky human with limited access to these interweb tools, trying to engage in public discourse. Not for the purposes of anybody going, I'm going to blindly believe what he's saying and then just blindly do stuff. No. But for the purposes of, hey, hear me out. Critical thinking must be applied. And let's see if we can't contribute towards steering the collective ship towards a better direction than we currently finding ourselves in. That's always been my motivating thing. So, boom. Let's break things up a little bit because my brain needs a little bit of a reset, and it'll help if I actually listen to the music. This is the Almost Daily Variety Gaming live stream show Extravaganza. Thank you for being here. Thank you to everybody who just joined on TikTok. Even though, whoa, what's going to happen when TikTok disappears? Will TikTok disappear? That's a whole, I've noticed, that's been a theme in the discourse, in the discussion around the proposed ban / whatever you want to call. Oh, wonkadoodles! I never turned on my laser beams over there. I did adjust the camera, but that was like 40 minutes ago. Boom. There's my cork board upon which I put a lot of theoretical pins, like the guy in the meme, but different. It's weird to be back. Thanks to whoever's watching. Now, see, Streamlabs desktop is weird. It tells me that I've got one viewer. Presumably, that's one viewer on Twitch. Hello, one viewer on Twitch, and thank you for being here, whoever you are. I don't know if that's like one of my two siblings who might have like set themselves to auto lurk my live stream, which if it is, then 99.999% of all that time that they've been there, they're not watching because they're a very busy professional in their own right, doing much cooler things in their profession than I'm doing. Because I don't even know what. That's a whole nother discussion. I need to put on a little music and step away from the webcam for one hot second. But thank you to everybody who's here, whether you're here on Twitch, whether you're here on TikTok. If you are here on TikTok, please do take a moment. Sorry to get what is it called? Self-promotional. But if you go to solo.to, you will find all the different ways that we can stay in touch. If you're liking the vibe, if you followed along that strange spirally discourse we just participated in, if you're like, I don't even know what the F you're talking about, well then, hang tight. Just know that there's a link page you can go to should you find what we return to discuss in a hot second interesting and engaging. But forgive me for right now. My mouth, my vocal cords, and my brain need a little itty-bitty station break. And so I invite you to engage your ear holes with this as I step away for one just hot second. Be right back, friends, and we'll resume the discussion. Thank you for being here, friends. Moving forward, the plan is to kick off the day with whenever that is. Whether I wake up at 4 in the morning or wake up at 4 in the afternoon, because my personal sleep schedule has been running amok. To start off every day with the pregame chat lounge session, which will turn into sort of like a mini podcast episode, which is separate from also trying to almost daily record a podcast episode for my podcast over at Sprecher.com. Long story short, I kind of owe everybody on every platform a bit of an apology because this New Year's, I went from thinking I was ready to bootstrap into juggling, making content in a fun, crazy, weird, different projects that are all sort of about doing different things as the kernel for a different kind of live stream show. One of the things I was going to start doing, for example, was on Wednesdays, writing a chapter for one of my book series. Every Wednesday, minimum. And then if on a random Thursday or a random Sunday or whatever, the impulse and the idea and the motivation to do a little bit more of that came up, I'd be able to do that too. And then one day of the week, I'd be like, start the day with, start every day with a pregame chat lounge session, or a pre-show chat lounge session, some sort of like live stream that is not a podcast, to talk about the kinds of things that I would start with a podcast, then with a thing, and introduce other segments like Mr. Zeppo teaches himself guitar. Mr. Zeppo, talks about breaking news from world events. Mr. Zeppo talks about et cetera, and start trying to, do these things in either short bursts or in just rolling, ongoing, variety, chaotic, long form streams in which I also, sort of divert myself to create, some of the stuff at the same time. To that end, one of the things I want to do on this live stream for this hot second is actually do one of the little things that I can do is invite my audience to remember for themselves individually and as a member of this community to try and take a moment of silence to reflect on and empathize with, and if you believe in prayer, pray for, and if you don't believe in prayer, insert whatever substitute activity you do subscribe to, like meditate for, send thoughts and energy to, or on behalf of, or for, whatever it is that you respectfully, genuinely, authentically do in a moment of silence. I now honestly, genuinely invite you all, whether you're on Twitch and you're watching this live, or whether you're on TikTok and you're watching this live. Sorry, I haven't been reading off people's names. I've been managing the thing here on Streamlabs. I humbly invite everybody, and whether you're watching this live or in the not too distant future on Twitch or YouTube or anywhere else where I might upload this or share this to in the not too distant future, please do join us now and in the future in taking a moment of silence to just honor and that's the wrong one. I meant to click through to this one. Please join me in a moment of silence to honor all those and reflect on the pain of all those who are suffering around the world. Inclusively, like regardless of what the cause may be, for all those who are suffering around the world, let us take a moment of silence to send them our love and our healing energies. If you can join us in that, theoretically. Please and thank you. Let us begin. And thank you. I hope that didn't hurt people's ears or come as a shock, that little bell. Thank you. And welcome. There's so many people piling in on TikTok, which is kind of surprising. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm streaming to TikTok and Twitch TV simultaneously using, and exclusively, by the way, no other platforms, using Streamlabs Desktop for my iMac. And the only reason I'm not trying to promote them, I'm just saying that's what I'm using, and that's why I can't read everyone's names. Where the F is my main camera? Forgive me for thank you for that. Thank you for joining me, and I apologize for the limitations on the technology that I'm currently working with. But yeah. It's weird. The world is just seemingly getting more and more difficult to endure because of the cumulative impact of so many different things. But again, for those of you who are new or just joining us, I'm weird, I'm wild, I'm wacky, and I'm promoting a project of many projects for which I sometimes feel really guilty that I'm trying to focus on and work on. And apparently the stream has been disconnected. And or maybe not. That's why I haven't been on all year. And I love being able to say that this early on in the year. But given the scale and context of the way that I meant to do it as a live stream show, it's an almost daily thing. It's supposed to be. And I'm not living up to that name. And I haven't for some time because it's been, for different reasons and different times, overwhelming. This, by the way, is just coffee. It's not the reason why. It's just coffee. The reason I bring it up is because I'm trying to quit coffee. And that's a whole nother level of stress. Because if there's anything I have a problem with, it's drinking way too much coffee. Okay, anyways, we are back. I am back, and you guys are back. Hello, thank you. Okay, let's discuss. Stuff is wild and wacky and crazy in the world, and that is unfortunate, and that is a reality. And we have to collectively, in my humble opinion, prevent ourselves and each other from falling into the pit traps. Into the pit, what is that the right term? Pitfalls is another one. Into the ego traps, if I may be so bold as to borrow that one from one particular school of thought, of any and all like manipulative and irrational ideological, socio-political, and yes, even religious ideology. If that ideology influences us or instructs us or manipulates us or whichever way you want to talk about it, if it induces us, if it invokes us to, if it causes us to dehumanize, devalue the humanity of others, especially if they're targeted and vilified and used as scapegoats. And I always get accused of blindly defending the wrong people. I'm not blindly defending anybody. I'm saying we should avoid blindly dehumanizing anyone at all, because that's unhelpful. And in fact, ironically, is the beginning of the slippery slope rabbit hole path down becoming exactly that which you're supposedly righteously fighting against. If we want to fix the problems in the world, in my humble opinion, we will not achieve it by vilifying others. We will not achieve it by targeting for hatred anyone. We will not achieve it by pretending to be superior than anyone else, right? From any perspective of the us versus them relationships or dichotomies that are out there. We will achieve it through healing. I find myself a little bit sort of full of new something or another, because it is hopefully a good sign that today we get the news that one of the most prominent and controversial and globally discussed and, focused on conflicts of the many, multiple dozens, multiple hundreds. No, there aren't hundreds. I think there's like a grand total of 50 plus, 55 plus, depending on how you count them and how you measure them in terms of the conflicts, activities, and ongoing histories, etc. Things that qualify as wars. But this is, up there in the terms of, it is, for better or worse, one of the top three paid attention to in the world. And there is arguably the good news that broke today. And if you haven't heard it, hey, go check it out for yourself. Don't take my word for it. I'm not to be a source of anything. I'm just a guy with an opinion and way too many funky performance art online projects of different types that he's trying to juggle and bootstrap into more professional existence. And so far has been, not exactly doing the greatest job of balancing and getting it done. But here we are, right? Thank you for being here. It's a great thing. I applaud it. And as I posted to one of my primary social media accounts, when I first sort of wrapped my brain around the context and I'm obviously not privy to all the details, but some of the publicly reported on details that seem to be, what's going down. It's a great sense of relief, honestly. And I am full of gratitude and mildly hesitant hope. Because, not to be too cynical sounding or controversial, but this conflict and the people engaged in it, the communities engaged in it, the players, let's call them the players engaged in it, because not all of the population of the two entities are participating. But the players involved in it don't have the greatest track record of following through, right? When we reach similar thresholds of working through the political and psychological and what's the word? God, I can't believe my brain just brain farted on such a insert redacted word here that sits right next to political when you talk about when two countries negotiate or two two big global entities negotiate their shit out. I really do hope and pray in the authentic sense that it is now going to be part of my meditations, that this may truly genuinely be the beginning of an authentic, of a genuinely cathartic and catharsis inducing and heart changing, heart healing process that endures these stages and their horizons and the things that must be worked out within them, and works, continues to build momentum and grow and evolve and brings about a real, authentic, lasting peace that is more than just an indefinite and uncertain ceasefire, but truly an end to that war. Because that war is bigger, and I don't mean just the war that we've been measuring in weeks and months, and have just celebrated not too long ago the anniversary of in terms of it's finally become something to talk about in years. I mean the broader conflict, the broader issue, the broader thing, and in a way that isn't, oh, they just did the worst horrible things to sort of possible to turn the page, but is truly rooted and anchored in the healing of both sides, or in the activities that will bring about healing of people on both sides of that debate. And that's, of course, what I pray for on the front of all things. Those who rail against me may or may not realize, but whether it's American politics or the intellectual discourse around the global histories of organized religion at all, I'm always speaking from a position of this framework that I'm trying to over-articulate today, that healing has to be fundamental to any of it, right? We can argue and debate policy and or pragmatic solutions, yes, and I would rather be discussing actual solutions than nonsensical content that doesn't really actually include real, meaningful, tangible solutions, which is why I get on this, critical of certain kinds of content, even if it is partially accurate in what it's exposing people to. If it lacks the components of, or the puzzle pieces that I think are critical, and it's not just because I think they are, but it's because I can't, after a lifetime's worth of observation, thinking, discussion, consideration, debate, and putting on different hats and looking at it from as many perspectives as possible, I can't see a way past it, right? I can't see a way past that. If we don't root and anchor and invoke healing as part of our discussions, as part of our analysis, as part of our work, as part of the real solution, and I don't mean it sarcastic quotes, but actual genuine quotes, whatever that means, whatever that distinction means, then what are we doing? Right? Here we are on the precipice of what may pan out to be net positive, genuine change. So let's acknowledge that and encourage it and applaud it and even, yes, celebrate it with the solemnity and the sobriety and the gravitas necessary to never lose sight of the fact that suffering was not limited to or the exclusive property of one side or the other, right? But that human beings on all sides of these things are caused to suffer. Whether we're talking about one, the conflict that we're celebrating this this potential meaningful shift and change and pivot towards a resolution as announced earlier today, or any of the others that are ongoing, or of different categories or of different classes or different nature of conflict. I'm trying to address my thoughts at the full spectrum of things because I think that from a species-wide perspective, we gain some comprehension that maybe there is a little bit of a different way to analyze everything, so that we can kind of heal past and grow past the catch-22s of mutually assured annihilation that seems to have become the norm in all conflicts, whether they're intellectual conflicts or kinetic ones. You know what I mean? Rhetorical conflicts are conflict, and can potentially lead to and or inspire all kinds of problematic and painful physical kinetic conflicts at all the levels imaginable. And it's a holistic process, right, friends? And it's difficult to bear witness to. It's really reached a threshold. Because again, the distinction I'm trying to draw is that we should reorient the discussion. Regardless of, it's got to be rooted in the details and the nuances and the specificities of each event or each conflict, obviously. And I'm not saying to speak from a species-wide perspective as a way to brush aside or disrespect any perspective, but rather to include them all and try to find a way to reintegrate them all and transcend, identify and catalog the boundaries or the barriers or the disagreements, and to focus. Excuse me, I'm getting a little choked up, both with emotion and with that chaotic and annoying, and hopefully at some point when there's enough time and distance away from it, comical fact that when I choose to get up and live stream, there's always, for some reason, some kind of traffic jam of hiccups and burps, sometimes complicated by the other traffic jam of a sneeze/cough that just disrupt everything and cause chaos in my brain and can wreak enough havoc that I lose track of what the F I'm talking about. Right. Today's epic big breaking news. My gaming content doesn't usually get political, but my podcast does. And today I wanted to address this in one fell swoop. I'm probably going to make this a podcast. I'm going to wrap things up. That was a long way to introduce my acknowledging of today's big breaking news, but I wanted to address certain ideas and certain subjects in a certain order. And I want to make sure that this is not overlooked or forgotten or swept away or cast aside. There's a lot of cause to be grateful, and there's a lot of cause to look forward to turning the page. But I don't think we should collectively allow anyone that violated anybody's human rights on either side of any of the conflicts be forgotten about, right? Like, especially if it got, like, more than just, like, that's the part that chaps my hide about the hypocrisy of certain ideologues and their expressed opinions on the airwaves. It's like they want to just sweep away, or wink wink nudge nudge, say no more, never allow for justice to address for the fact that human rights were violated. Now this is true in different ways about different conflicts and different issues, and different parties or players in the complex cacophony of world events going on in the world. And they just but to bring it back to that level of perspective, if we ever want to achieve any of those goals of bringing about a true sense of justice has actually been served, and not just had lip service paid to, or had smoke blown about it, we cannot neglect the importance and the significance of, all caps, healing. I wish I had a graphic for it. Oh, I should make a graphic for it right now. Join me in what is in the nature of, in the fun form factor of my show, that is, one of the things that I was trying to rehearse into perfection, and that feels less lame and is easier to pull off when I'm on the days when I'm not feeling so overwhelmed by everyone's suffering and by the injustice of it all, and by how, by comparison to that, any of my ideas are, it's hard to be like, look at me, when all of the rest of that is going on in the world. Pay my ideas attention to, even when it comes to my big important ideas about the world. But I'm trying to weave my big, and I use the word important comically. I don't mean to sound self-aggrandizing. But this variety chaos of, so we just took a real moment of silence, because I really hope that we can rally around that as a way to connect to the power of empathy, of having empathy, and of consciously choosing to engage in the act of empathizing. What's the word? Oh man, I just forgot what I wanted to make graphics for. What did I want to make a little graphic for? I just did that one. They just changed the layout to everything on this app, and it's confusing the living daylights out of my hand-eye brain part. No, I don't want to open that as in this project. Fuck off. How do I get out of this project? Get out of this project. Good. Okay. I'm going to look at my stuff to reopen a previous project, to edit it, and to clone it and make something else out of it. Not video game. What did I just... Shit. This is why I wish I had someone to collaborate with, because hopefully, in theory, whoever would be my co-host would be like, oh, you were just saying this and thinking about a graphic for this, I think? And because I just sort of hit a brick wall and am drawing a complete and total blank. Healing. Oh, just the word. Healing. Ooh. Do I use the Christ consciousness background? Do I use this more yogi, transcendental, spiritual background? Or do a little bit of both? Can I merge both of them? Actually, I want to make it a sideways When did I make that card? Oh my god, there's so many different ways. I'm now... Ooh, template. Should I use that one? Okay. I can't use this keyboard over here anymore, so we're going to have to go... Ba-ba-ba-bum. DJ said, play a little music or something in the background, but first make sure your volume output level is down in the 30s. Thank you. Not that one. Sure. Even though that's a bit comical in tone. Alright. This is the word I wanted to... no. Oh, we're gonna swap them, duh. And now a better font. What kind of font says, like, speaks to you, healing? Add fonts from wherever, upload, more fonts. Acme Gothic wide. Oh my god, get out of the way, keyboard. Scale. Is that big enough? Oof. Now, where is... I should be doing this with my glasses on, for crying out loud. Alright, so one of the things that I will be trying to do on my live stream show of Variety Chaos Content Creation Project of Many Projects is making random graphics stuff. Anybody who's been following along knows that a theme, and this is totally unrelated to my metaphysical rant just now, but one of the actual... unfortunately weird, dumb, annoying themes, where the F is shape. Here we go. About my live stream is that I get, let's do it, make it 42. 42. I get lots of bots coming in here trying to just sell me stuff, services, systems. And oftentimes it's like, hey, you know, the script is about being, you know, someone's in here supposedly being a graphic artist. And I'm like, so am I. Okay, we're back on track thematically. I know that it's easy to dismiss, but I am... And trust me, I have heard every form of dismissal in my day. For those of you who do not know, and this may seem irrelevant, or this may seem like a weird tangent to go off on real quick, but I am an internet elder to a certain degree. In as much as that I've been using the regular internet, the regular standard consumer internet, on an almost daily basis since before AOL existed. And a large part of my activities on the internet during the course of all of that time has been engaging in public discourse discussions at the individual level, at the private level, and in DMs and or in the community, as in different communities and different platforms, and just a multitude of different ways about everyone's opinions and explanations and theories about what may or may not be going on and why it may or may not be happening the way it is. Fundamental to my lifetime's worth of observing all of that, I'm left with mostly a multitude of questions, dear friends. Very little in the way of satisfying solutions proposed to consider and to discuss, and convinced that the path to conceiving of, developing, discovering, and implementing such things, and by that I mean real, meaningful, tangible solutions to the actual real-world problems that we experience collectively as a species, not just as any particular tribe or nation state, that we won't be able to do it unless we root and anchor all of that in something like, oh, apparently the stream has been disconnected. Well, let us try to reconnect. I try not to be, a downer or a. People accuse me of being a denialist of something. You're an insert denialist. Not, insert something here. You're an insert their favorite thing here. And no, that's not really where I'm trying to get at. I ask questions that come from my ongoing attempt at critical thinking, with the acknowledgement that I could be wrong and that my thinking could be flawed, and that obviously, despite the fact that I actively work towards trying to identify and remove biases and or incorrect assumptions and or influences caused by manipulative, one of the earliest things I've been pointing out, because I recognized it it just hit me really hard at a really early stage of my process of observing and asking questions. And that's it. It's almost meaningless to accuse someone else or some other group of being, quote, manipulated or brainwashed, because the whole planet has been saturated in it. The entire species has been stewing in a pot of content generated by who? The species. I have yet to see any truly convincing, and I get, see any truly hardline convincing event of it being anybody else's fault other than our own. I'm open-minded enough to be like, if you can introduce me to a member of insert any variety of others that are not human, so that I can confront and ask them questions, then I'll change that. I'll update that thesis. I'll update that part of my understanding. And because it is ultimately, everything that we confront, every problem that we face, every toxic issue, every unhealthy issue, every dangerous issue, every trauma-inducing issue, insert whatever issue you're intimately familiar with, whatever collection of ideas you're personally focused on, they're all interconnected, yes. And they're all, when you step back far enough away, caused by us if we step up and into taking collective responsibility as a species, looking at it all and analyzing it all and thinking about it all and, applying critical thinking, critical questioning about it all from a framework that is inherently species wide in its construction or in its orientation or from its perspective. If we dare to boldly all join in on thinking about and discussing this from a species-wide perspective, because arguably, and many people will laugh this off or dismiss it or just refute it blindly or negate it, not want to engage with it. But ultimately, on a long enough timeline, the survival of the species is a collective responsibility. Is it not? And this is where I usually lose people, right? Like, whatever else is going on, if we don't implement something that creates and allows for and or manifests and or implements, whatever the word that makes most sense in your head, if we don't heal ourselves and each other and the species collectively, if we don't step up to that responsibility as individuals / a collective, and if we don't do this collectively, I fear we are ensuring that we don't ever get anything done. And that we just keep going around in the circles that we've been going around in. That I've observed in my time here on this living mother nature divine womb of a place you call a planet, of a living place you call a planet, whose dimensions are so mind-bogglingly more complicated than the limited and narcissistically self-oriented argument of whether it's a globe or a flat disk. See what I mean? That's one of my favorite examples. Because I'm not a conspiracy theorist. It's funny when conspiracy theorists get mad at me and try to blast me for not buying into conspiracy theory community or culture. It's not that I don't. I have a conspiracy theory that the vast majority of self-proclaimed conspiracy theorists go, oh, I don't want to think about it. You suck. Get away. Shut up. Stop talking. I don't want to think it's wrong. And run away from, and then mock me and ridicule me. Or do something in the spectrum of everything from calling me a shill to just dismissing me as if I was a 4-year-old talking about their favorite imaginary cartoon characters. And these are, everything I talk about is a component of it. Duh. Because what is public discourse other than the rigorous presentation of our worldview and analysis of everything that's led us to the conclusions we present in our worldview. And people will step up to me and tell me I'm wrong without even bothering to try to begin to look at and attempt to comprehend what my worldview is. And my worldview is rooted in not just healing as a random term from the cultures of spirituality and hippie new age, but from the perspective that the reason it's meaningful, the reason it's effective, the reason it's powerful, the reason it's even possible is because the entire universe is one living interconnected, integrated, fractal holographic, self-recursive, self-recurring, self-generating, self-exploring, we get, we come full circle to the place where, who was it? Was it Carl Sagan? The author of this statement varies by timeline, because those, that's what this part of the graphic is about. But the cosmos attempting to understand itself. I have a better version of that graphic that doesn't look so fuzzy, I think. But too late now because we've made it. Am I wrong? It's not impossible that I'm wrong. But everything I've considered, everything I've looked into, everything I've read, which includes my own, and this is 30 years ago, self-guided university level 101 tour of world religious history, which I'm sure is riddled with all kinds of missing information. I do not ever claim to be an expert. Just like when we're playing Call of Duty, I do not claim to be a master Call of Duty player. I do not claim to be a historian. I do not claim to be an expert in anything. But I am a deeply concerned individual member of the human species that has brought a rigorous curiosity and a thoughtful approach to exploring other people's thoughts, concerns, worldviews, questions, and analyses of what may or may not be going on. And bringing to that process, to that crucible, to that table, my own lived experiences and my own phenomenological events, right? Which to some people may or may not mean anything. But the universe is alive. It is a living cosmic entity whose form and function is one of self-referencing, self-recursive, self-mirroring, self-reflecting, fractal holographic processes and architecture and function. From the building blocks to the most massive architecture visible of the bubble or the unit or the neighborhood of the living cosmos that you reside in, it's all fractal holographic. And we are nodes of consciousness, we are nodes of existence in the living fractal holographic web of existence, otherwise known as the Matrix. No, I don't mean the Matrix as defined, or more accurately, more truthfully, redefined by the memes and the content. I have long argued and have been trying to inject the comprehension into the public discourse that this misuse of the Matrix, which predates the movies but has obviously exploded into the common consciousness, into the category of common sense or public knowledge, the Matrix is not what this redefinition has turned it into. The Matrix is one of the ways of understanding and or addressing and or referencing to the divine, living, fractal holographic, cosmic mother womb that through self-recursive, infinite fractal holographic recursion gives birth to this infinity of all possible lives. And that we are literally each other. We are one and the same as that mother womb, only separated by the limitations of the filters of the phenomenological vessel that is our existence in these bodies and in these lifetimes that are little tunnels of cosmic, little birth canals of cosmic phenomenological experience and witnessing of the universe from an individuated experience through this making of, this giving birth to vessels for consciousness. So we should do everything differently because we're doing it all wrong. That's what my crazy art or performance art is about. And some find that laughable, some find that controversial, some find that unintelligible, some find that impossible to follow, some find that familiar and comfortable and akin to their own thinking. And I'm sharing it into the world in various forms and functions, as well as an encapsulation of it all as a caricature of itself in my book series, for the purposes of hopefully identifying, finding, attracting, and communicating with, engaging with the audience of minds willing to hear me out and take into consideration these ideas, for the purposes not of blindly believing what I got to say, but thinking through it all and engaging with it and asking me the questions that come up for them and participating in the experimental process of trying to make art that fosters that conversation, trying to make art that not only entertains in a sort of generic way or entertains in a way that utilizes entertainment systems that are typical and in common use now, but that also pushes the conversation forward in a hopefully new and hitherto sort of unexpected direction, which is that, there is hope that we can indeed create, generate, invoke, or manifest healing. And then be able to build systems that are better than the systems we find ourselves bound up in and having issues with and finding to be toxic. Instead of arguing and fighting about it and engaging in relentless, endless, meaningless bloodbathery about it. You know what I'm saying? Cuckoo, crazy nut job, hippy dippy, utopian, futuristic, retro historical, action adventure, sci-fi, rom-com, literary, experimental book series, and ancillary or interrelated content creation, art performance projects are my jam. And if you're down, here we are. But there you go. That's my central thrust. My argument always returns to this and nothing else. No one is telling me to talk about this. No one is paying me to talk about this. And I'm not trying to, I am trying to engage with, the industries that are at my disposal to try and work from home to make performance art content and make a living out of it. But I'm not trying to trick anybody or scam anybody or disrespect anybody, or misinform anyone in any way, shape, or form as I do that. And if it turns out I'm wrong about any of it, I will be the first to profoundly apologize. But I am, as of yet, to be convinced otherwise. I think there is a path to be rediscovered, to be reinvestigated, and to be explored once again, that leads us down an internal, a spiritual, a metaphysical rabbit hole that maybe spirals up inwards instead of down inwards or outwards, and leads us to a place of hope and radiant light that communicates that healing in a transcendent and transcendental way. And I truly, honestly choose my words as carefully as I'm consciously able to. I'm not reading a script. There's no effing teleprompter. I didn't sit down. One of my creative blocks is that people keep telling me you should sit down and write scripts for your things, right? My sibling very correctly reminded me, whatever you're doing, if it's a sketch comedy reel or a live stream podcast, or insert any of the ways in which I might be trying to express myself, it's a product. And I'm like, yeah, you're not wrong. But it's also a real, raw, radically unscripted product in which I'm speaking authentically and genuinely and from the deepest center of my being and the deepest, most concerned part of my heart. Because the trajectory we seem to have been on, leading us up to where we find ourselves now, is arguably, to me, potentially unsustainable. Apparently unsustainable. If I'm wrong about that, okay. It's still profoundly and disturbingly self-destructive and self-harming. Again, from a species-wide perspective. And never would I be one to prioritize the survival of the species at the expense of the survival of other things, because I am one of those like, whoa. Whatever we do, it's got to somehow flow into or lead us back towards a meaningful and well-balanced relationship with nature, with reality itself, right? Because it's to work in the opposite direction is madness. To work against Mother Nature and reality itself, especially if we can sort of transcendentally come to some comprehension that Mother Nature, aka reality itself, is indeed like alive and as much our literal mother as the human being that gave birth to us, just at a different scale, right? In a different way. But inherently, and there are. I'm not just making crazy things up. There's just the evidence is there. We've talked about it before. The podcast is crazy, strewn with the discussion of it. So I humbly invite you to come back to the podcast if this sort of thing engages you. But this is sort of a crossover event in which I'm trying to bring myself back to the content creation exercise on a daily basis, which includes the podcast, but also the act of playing games. And this has been the pregame chat show where I hopefully can find something in what I've rambled about that doesn't scare viewers of my video game content away, but rather attracts more and provides a sort of crossover bridge for people to engage in the different kinds of content creation projects that I'm working on. But I also think I need to reevaluate the way in which I'm going about it. But that's a whole nother discussion for another day, because I couldn't even have done what I'm doing right now over the course of the last week and a half, 2 weeks, because it was just too brutal and too overwhelming and too difficult to process intellectually and psychologically. And the cumulative, I really have a hard time with that word unless I stop myself. The cumulative impact um, everyone has their threshold, and I hit my bright yellow warning danger zone. We're about to cross the the red line threshold of needing to just decompress and take time away from from doing any of this kind of stuff and thinking about it too. I had to like, which I couldn't stop doing. Um, but yeah, I invite anybody who finds my content interesting and engaging to join me in considering and questioning and discussing and walking through these ideas at large. But I wanted to bring this to the center, or I wanted to focus on this as my first return to any of it, um, because I'm aware that it's easy for folks to miss that point or this point, that like everything I suggest or everything that I'm doing somehow finds its way back to this notion, even if it doesn't seem like it's got anything to do with it. You know what I'm saying? So, what are your thoughts? I guess I'll revisit in the comments as I try to share this in different ways. I'm right before the New Year's. One of the like aha moments I had with my workflow is that what I'm going to do is I'm going to focus moving forward this year as we re-engineer all of it on bringing live stream variety content to Twitch and TikTok if it continues to be possible, and or other platforms, by streaming it to Twitch and then reposting it to other places to the best of my ability, and inviting folks to engage in the journey and in the process of having self-reflective conversation about it by, taking the time to hear me out and then asking me the questions that I cannot predict that come up in, the minds and hearts of audience members. And see where that takes us, right? As opposed to arguing about whose fault it is. I'm trying to create spaces where we can acknowledge that there is fault, there are problems that must be rectified, and individuals who must be held to account, but that from a species-wide level, there's a little bit of holding ourselves to account as a collective that must happen. And then, turning things around through some series of decisions and actions and tactics that cannot fail to incorporate the importance of healing at an individual and community / tribal / species-wide level. Have I repeated myself too much? Perhaps. I'm not seeing any chat anywhere, so I think that's one of the reasons why I just sort of let myself go and keep going. Thank you to Chango Barrera, the last person that apparently entered the live stream over on TikTok. Man, I really wish this page provided a full list. It should be its own panel of information instead of this one line of rotating alert type thing. But it is what it is. So forgive me if I have not been able to do that the way other TikTok streamers do. It's the limitation of the fact that I'm streaming with the tools that I'm using as opposed to other tools. If I were on a PC, I think it would be different. But I'm not. So let's see where this goes.
how does that's why I was having so much, on top of the pain I was feeling on behalf of others, not for myself, but for others. And that is a sort of sensory overload when there's so many different things going on in the world that you have to acknowledge and recognize that are causing pain to innocent people who didn't do anything to deserve it. And that there are others who are not so innocent and that are participating in the causation of pain for others. It's overwhelming and it can seem insurmountable. But after working through that to the best of my ability and applying some of my own techniques that I've come across in my time exploring this precise issue, I feel a little better, and I feel like I might be ready to come back to this discourse. And so I invite you to consider everything that just fell out of my mouth. Take your time to think about it. Dear friends, dear sisters and brothers in humanity, dear brothers and sisters in being the human species, dear siblings, and in sharing this with others, should you think it is worth putting to that test of thinking it through, right? And then going about your own journey of questioning it, picking it apart, thinking through it, applying critical thinking skills to it, and investigating for yourself. One of the reasons why I speak with confidence is because I'm not the first to come to this conclusion. And there is a great big old history out there of folks saying, hey, yo, humanity, you're doing a bunch of this all wrong. Stop what you're doing and invest in some form of what may be called transformative, transcendental, spiritual healing of the mind, of the heart, and ultimately also of the body. Because it's important and because it is the lack thereof. Here, for those of you who may not understand, I think it's inherently obvious to me, but let me bring it to a closing sort of point and just pin the tail on the donkey. The lack of being healed, the absence of healing, the fact that we are not in an already hitherto previously healed state is what perpetuates the ongoing calamity, the ongoing state of the world being the way it is, the ongoing set of problems that we ourselves created for ourselves, the ongoing corruption of those who have been or those who will be corrupted by whatever the F corruption is. Because where does it come from? Occam's razor, the simplest explanation, has no need for the one that takes the least amount of extracurricular, extra unnecessary, crazy assumptions, right? So if we pare down to that's where I'm at, There's just us here. Now, plenty of people are obsessed with ideas that would contradict that and say otherwise. But I'm not seeing any of that generate solutions. So I stand by where I'm at. I'm like the guy in that meme sitting in a chair by the folding table with the little sign that says something about changing their mind. They got a coffee mug and I got a coffee tumbler, but I am open-minded enough. But I'm also not going to just bend the knee to the first person who presents a thorough presentation, which I think a lot of people think is what's supposed to happen. No. I'm on a journey of presenting my own thesis, friends, and I'm inviting you along. Um, Hopefully, I won't suddenly waffle and fall down because of crippling doubt and imposter syndrome the next time I'm hit with a wallop of unfortunate news and tragedy tragedy occurring somewhere in the world, or bless it, very near to me. Um, but if I have to, I will not apologize for having to take the time to step aside from it all to focus on my own healing. Which is the word of the day, the word of the year, I think. And if, I'm inviting everyone to join me in attempting to make it be that. You know what I'm saying? Let's see how much further we can guide ourselves individually and collectively as a human species towards individual and mutual, collective, community-wide, tribe-wide, nation-wide, global, species-wide, mental, emotional, psychological, physical, spiritual, transcendental, metaphysical healing. Instead of everything else we've already done a bunch of times, right? Because we've been doing the other stuff. We've been doing, as a species, we've been doing the boring old transactional, oops, that's the wrong button. That's the wrong button too, because the Xbox went to sleep. Here we go. There we go. Everything else we've been doing for a really long time. Apparently, the stream has potentially been disconnected again. I don't know if it's going to show up as different streams or if it's still connected to TikTok. Or I don't know how TikTok handles disconnections and reconnections. I don't know if I'm still live on TikTok. I don't know if I'm still live on Twitch. Let's refresh those two tabs, see what's going on. But there you go, friends. There's the heart of my argument. If you can pardon the cheesy pun, which, regardless of what people may or may not have understood about me in prior engagements, that has always been at the heart of my approach. That has always been at the center of what I'm trying to do, and at the center of my criticism when I critique ideology, when I critique, national or international public figures or public institutions, when I critique or criticize or question what global political, ideological leaders of various kinds appear to be doing, it comes from that place. Honestly and genuinely. And so I invite you to join me in a roller coaster journey of, coming back to that place as we try to, as we as a community try to return to some sense of normalcy, where I, as a content creator, I, as a performance artist, I, as a storyteller, return to the almost daily practice of very seriously speaking about, addressing on, questioning, calling out the things that I see on an almost daily basis, and weaving that into literary, fictional self-expression and other content projects. I'm going to stop rambling. Thank you for being here. Thank you for checking me out. Thank you for hearing me out. Thank you for checking this out. And I apologize if because of where I've been, or where my brain is at, I've appeared and or come off as incoherent to anyone. But I humbly invite you to endure some of my recursive logorrhea and just try to sit back, relax, and join me in the theater of the imagination and hear me out and hear the words I'm talking about, hear the images and the references I'm making, and let it sort of all explode in your brain over time. Or not. I don't know. I'm going to stop rambling. I'm going to hope the best for you. I'm going to send you my greetings and my wishes that you may be also enduring the overwhelming affront of how this year has kicked off, and that you may be off to as good and as groovy of a start in your own personal context as you can possibly muster, and that you may find opportunity for yourself as a member of the human species of this complicated, sometimes nasty, sometimes disappointing, sometimes beautiful and charming and witty and funny and hilarious and amazing and marvelous and complicated and self-contradictory community of many communities that we truly are. Because we got to stop thinking about these things in terms of us versus them and enemies versus enemies and this idea versus that idea and this tribe versus that tribe and that ideology, because it's gotten old. It's so effing old. And it costs so much in the way of innocent lives, especially innocent, unarmed children that didn't choose any of it. And we can bring about an effective solution. We just got to stop arguing about anything that does not prioritize contributing towards an effective solution. Thank you. I'm going to shut up now. Go be good human beings out there in the real world, as well as in the social media platforms and in the game lobbies. And thank you for hearing me out. Peace out. We'll be back again with something else. Maybe the very next thing I'll do is introduce the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo teaches himself guitar to shake things up and be a little different. Maybe I'll start playing the video games that we haven't touched in a hot minute. Maybe I'll work on my work. It is Wednesday. Oh, snap. Wait, what? No, where's the camera? Give me a camera. It's the wrong one. Well, this one works for TikTok. It's Wednesday. This is the year that I'm supposed to make Wattpad Wednesdays writing workshop a reality. So let's see if I can bring myself to do a little bit of that next. But I had to get all of that off my chest because all of that had everything to do with why I haven't been in the right mood or the right mental state or the right emotional framework to bring myself to turn on the equipment and start broadcasting. Where the F is the camera? Here we go. So yeah. Thanks again. Oh, I keep forgetting that I'm in the really short music. I keep trying to put on a little bit of music to cut away to this, the end of the show. Thanks again. Thank you very much. And I welcome you to the Zeppoverse, an experimental wackadoodle project of many projects that's about to reboot itself, that is rooted and anchored in exactly everything I just rambled about just now. Because I try to be all about the heart of the matter. Even if for some people that may seem wackadoodle and out of nowhere and it irrationally unrelated to most of the other things that I seem to be about. All right. Peace be with you, friends. I'll see you when we come back. hopefully for some Wattpad Wednesday writing workshop reboot 101 kind of content.